Hello, my fellow developers. Um, this is short developer's guide to using the ticket service. I'm doing a video instead of a traditional document because it can potentially save both parties' time. I would spend less time doing the recording and it'll be easier and faster for my client and fellow teammates to understand. So here is the Git repository called Walmart Ticket Service. And I trust in your guys' ability to pull it into your local. So I'll just start with the steps after you pull it to your local. So here's the terminal. I put this in the folder called Ticket Service. And before we start doing anything fun, let's go ahead and check. Oh, we have Maven installed correctly, and also the Java version is the one we wanted. So I'm using Java 8, but feel free to use Java 7. It'll do just fine. Alright, so after we get that set, can go ahead and build it, test it from command line. So Maven would go ahead, build the artifact and run all the tests, the JUnits that we wrote in our projects. And after the test is done, it'll go ahead and say, hey, build success. And of course, if any of those fails, it'll be a failure build. All right, so now we've seen the JUnits and the Maven. Let's go ahead and take a look at the real code. So I used a really standard structure here, which our services consist of three parts: the service, the model, and the DAO. In the service layer, we only have one service, that is, of course, the ticket service, the interface, and the implementation. And I also added a customized exception, which would give us more control over the data validation process and the exceptions we throw. I would say a customized exception would both benefit the developer ourselves and the customer, like other teams that's going to use our service. And in the model package, we have a seed hold, which is essentially the object that we use to hold a specific seed holding order and also a seed reservation order, because these two essentially have exactly the same data structure. They just have different status, right? One is hold and one is reserved. So we have enum here, which would represent the seed status, and the seed status attribute is, of course, in the seed hold object. We'll get back to it. And then our DAO layer is, we have two, so which would represent two tables in the database. Since we're not really required to put any real database structure here, I just used an object to mimic how the database would behave in this situation. So our seed DAO is the table that holds all the available seeds. And the seed hold DAO, of course, is the table that holds all the on-hold seed holding order and seed reservation order, right? So after the overview, I would go into details of each classes and share some detailed designs. First, let's look at the seat DAO. The seat DAO is again the table that will hold the seat information, and the most essential information for our project is just is it available or not. So here I just ignored all the other supporting attributes and only used a priority queue of integers to store all the available seat table index. So I'm using a priority queue because every time we want to hold new seat, we want the best available, right? And we want our program to find the best available ones the fastest. So naturally, I used priority queue here, and also there could be situations where the customer um, discard their already on hold seats or the system time them off. I didn't design specific scenarios like that in this service, but I put the DAO layer method here just for future use. So this class have initialize method, which would initialize the seat table here with a number of seat that is predefined in the TicketService class interface. And also we have get available seat number, which is required by the service. And also these two, I think they are kind of like your normal get and save, but since we need to track are they available or not, so we're actually pulling from the index and then add it back if the customer releases it. All right, next class, seat hold DAO. This table is used to hold both the on-hold seats and the reserved seats. And we also have an initialize method, which just initialize the list and then put now in it. And the other two is just both save and get. There's no like data validation or logic check in the DAO layer since that belongs to the service layer. And the DAO layer should do one thing and one thing only, that is to talk to the database in a sense that the database would understand. So the business layer logic does not really make sense to the database. The database wouldn't care if you want to save a seat hold with an ID that's already exists. The database would just treat it as an update. But we know that we don't want to do that, right? So when there's already exists a seat on hold order on the same ID. And going forward, we have models. First one is a seat hold. The ID is just a primary identifier, and the seat IDs are the identifiers for the seats that being held in this object. And status is the enum that we just showed here, which would represent the status of this order. And of course, customer ID, which give us reference to which customer is holding those tickets. And this is a pretty standard class. We have two constructor, empty one with attribute one, and a bunch of getter and setter. And we've already seen this one. So next, going to the service, we customize the exception just for the benefit that we can control it better, and our customer can also use this, make this to benefit themselves. And TicketService interface, which is pretty much what is in the requirements. I added one attribute here, total seat number, so the whole system would understand the same hard-coded number for the total seat. And last and the most important one is, of course, the ticket service implementation. So first we have seat DAO and seat hold DAO in the service layer. In real life, we would be injecting them into the service layer and following a single design pattern, but since we're doing a trivial version of a service, so we'll just like make do with initializing a new instance. So the number of seats available is pretty straightforward, just calling the same method in DL layer. And the find and hold seats actually have like two data validation check, hey, if is this input valid, and hey, is the customer trying to reserve seats that are actually available. And after that, we'll just go ahead, we'll pull the seats from the DL layer so they wouldn't be available in the priority queue anymore. And then we put that in a seat hold object, and then we save it to the seat hold table. So this is find and hold seats. And after the customer did that, the next step they will want to do is to reserve a seat. So in reserve seats, they would actually give seat hold ID and the customer email. I would say this customer email is kind of like a redundant attribute, since in the seat hold object we should already have the customer email, right? But since it's here, what we need to do is actually do a data validation saying, hey, it's the same customer trying to reserve the ticket that they just hold, or is someone else, right? So also we have like three data validation here. First, to check if the seat hold exists, and then check if it's already reserved, and also check if the email match. And after all is checked, we simply flip the status to reserved and then save it to our table. And then of course return the ID. This method here is purely because we are mimicking the database behavior, so I created this method so in JUnit test we can easily refresh the database and do the JUnit we want with a fresh start. Alright, last one, the JUnit test. So I only did the happy pass because I really don't have time to create anymore. It's already like 2:30 a.m. I'm sorry, but in the ideal world, we would try to hit every if else and every throw exception we have, so we know the program actually runs when the user gave us some parameters that doesn't make sense to us, and we would have something like add test and exception expected and specify the class, right? So that is also part of the reason why it's a good practice to customize your own exception, right? So here you can actually use it. So this is pretty straightforward happy pass JUnit tests, and if I have more time, I would be willing to put in more components in this projects. It's been a fun adventure, I would say. Please let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else you would like me to add. And have a good day. Thank you.